the sort of pain he had to endure, you know, and all of that before he passed. My heart goes out to the family, you know, the parents, the siblings. I hear he was a twin, twin sister, and this morning I'm reading that the twin sister, the senior brother, and the manager were at the site when he was brought. You can imagine. I mean, you can imagine how how they would handle this. And I see those beautiful kids he has with his wife, very pretty kids, and how these kids are going to take this. But again, I think it's also important that we recall how the news was handled by all of us, social media. I was watching his wife on, was it CNN, when she was telling her about how her kids got to hear about this in the news. You know, sometimes I think we need to be a bit more sensitive. I have not, since this whole period, made any comment whatsoever on my social media handle, because today you hear he's there, tomorrow you hear he was removed, the next day he said he's not there. This is a whole emotional roller coaster that we are putting this person. For us, he's a footballer. For all the people, he's a footballer that we love to watch. But he has very close family people whose life depends on him. Maybe a lot of the people who are posting these things, their lives don't depend necessarily on him. The next Black Stars match, there will be another left winger or right winger playing, so that's it. But he has very close, you know, family people whose life depends on him. And sometimes we must manage how we share some of these news. I don't know why I should go and share news about alleged finding of somebody who is being involved in an earthquake. I don't know how I should rush.
Maybe it was a joy, the frenzy. I mean, people were happy because we're all sad and praying that he'll be found. So when that news came,
so immediately it comes out, it is said, it is not confirmed. You should just manage it. We have individual responsibilities to some of these things. You know, I think for the way social media.
The embassy actually did confirm it. Only that they said they hadn't seen him, but they also got the news that he had been found. But
at least today, when he's found and passed,
today the body was seen.
I've seen official notices. It's been so that then we cannot comment. That's why we are probably even commenting forth. We need to learn. Social media has come to stay, but we need to be personal editors as well, and have personal editorial, you know, policies and principles in managing some of these things. We are even lucky that nobody has shared a picture of his body. By now it would be all over social media. I think we need to manage some of these things. But it's a very sad morning. I wish him all the best. I wish him wherever he is that he finds solace and heaven for his good heart.
Very well. Just to touch on the way we all manage the information. You see, I am also very worried about how on social media people rush to especially announce the death of prominent people. You see, we all have responsibilities. If it is not my responsibility to find out the state of Christian Atsu because I am not a sports commentator or I'm not a sports, you know, of those sports people. My duty is not to break the news of their death. So I should just follow and hope that they will also be responsible enough to do their cross-checking and verify their sources of information before they publish it. When they do, mine is to take that news in and not necessarily to spread it. And it is not just about Christian Atsu. I have many friends and family members who will tell you experiences of how they, you know, got to know about the death of very close ones on social media and haven't been able to get over, you know, the way the news, you know, came to them. Sometimes it is not even the death, but it is how the news gets to you when you are that close to the person. And because of that, on my social media handles, you will hardly see me write about the death of anybody. Sometimes it is maybe during the funeral of the person that I may write one or two things. Because at that point, I would have been convinced that every member, family member or friend who is supposed to have heard it properly may have heard it at that point. It is not your duty on social media to rush to announce, especially death of people. You know, sometimes the way people close to, you know, others hear that their death is more important to the healing process than even the death itself. You know, so I think that we have to be very careful on social media how we, you know, just go about posting, you know, about death of prominent people. It's not helpful to their families at all and their close relations.
I see. All right, very good points, and I think it's been well noted. We all have to be circumspect. We all have to be careful about how we convey or what we say about people on social media, especially their death situations. All right, so let's get back to the hard issues of domestic debt exchange, new exemptions, and calls for parliamentary approval. Indeed, the finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, says he has finally or officially written to the pensioner bondholders who did not sign onto the domestic debt exchange program for their exemption from the exercise. The minister says the government will honor coupons, payments, and maturing principals due the pensioners. This follows a picketing by pensioners at the premises of the finance ministry since Monday, the 6th of February 2023, in demand for an exemption from the DDEP. Briefing Parliament on the exercise, Ken Ofori-Atta says he has been distressed by the picketing of the pensioner bondholders. Let's listen to this report.
The protest by the individual bondholders is scheduled to commence on Monday, February 20. Unlike the pensioner bondholders, the individual bondholders are demanding payment of their matured bonds. For them, conversations have gone past demands for an exclusion from the debt exchange program.
The bond is a contract, so it's time to pay. So if government says I'll honor your bonds, it should be as good as self-exemption. So the distinction can only begin to arise when government doesn't honor its word. Then you say exemption is better. But ordinarily, once the contract is due, you pay. That's it. We don't need any esoteric terms, exemption, self-exempt, and the rest. No, because the bond is due. And government give the simple and clear language that it will pay. So if you're going to pay all bonds that are due, then that's it. Whether you use the word exemption or not, it doesn't matter.
The government has revealed that the domestic debt exchange program has witnessed 85% subscription rate despite the stiff opposition. But the individual bondholders say majority of its members did not subscribe to the program.
So obviously some individual bondholders would sign for various reasons. You ask the sociologists and the psychologists, they will tell you that in an exercise like this, you can never get 100% of the people listening to us and refusing to sign up. It's not. And the psychologists, they will tell you for one reason or another, some people will sign. You hear even the minister saying about 15 to 16% sign. Those are his statistics. In good time or later on, we will verify whether that's the actual number or it's not. But it's not surprising that some would sign. The main thing is that at least the overwhelming majority have got it right. They are not signing up, and government must honor.
They are thus urging government to honor payments of 3 of the old bonds which have matured.
Government made a promise. So Ofori-Atta said yes, the bonds will be honored. But as we speak now, Mr. Ajiman, the bonds that matured on the 6th of February, that was last week, Monday, have not been honored, if not been paid. Subsequently, some coupons matured last week. And also, I think today is Thursday, was it Monday again? So 3 different maturities, government hasn't paid. And so you see that just saying government will pay, government will honor, government will pay, government will honor, it's not sufficient.
They have threatened to protest continuously until the payments are made.
And so we're going to continue fighting. And so next week, Monday to Friday, we intend to picket at the Independence Square. And we invite you media men to come and carry it. We will fight and fight and fight till the government listens to us and honors its words. Because we've also even shown, all the professors of economics have shown that government must cut its expenditure. Government must live within its means. Simple. If government was living within its means, we will not have all this hula baloo.
It appears government and individual bondholders will have to hold more engagements as far as the domestic debt exchange program is concerned, despite government's assurance that these individual bondholders have been exempted from the program, particularly those who chose not to participate. There are calls for the government to make sure that for those bonds who have matured already.
All right, so you saw or heard that report on the matters that happened in Parliament when the finance minister went there and matters arising, the pensioner bondholders, etc. Now, so just yesterday, some 5 minority MPs, Honorable Atsu, Forcing, Minority Leader, Honorable Governors Kwame Agboja, Whip, Honorable Mahama Ayariga, Honorable Isaac Adungwe, and Honorable Roxanne Nelson Dafiamepo, together filed a private member's motion. And that motion says that this Honorable House requests of the Honorable Finance Minister to lay in Parliament government's debt restructuring program for consideration, humbly submitted. This has since been admitted by the Speaker, I understand. And so we expect to hear something on this come next week or Tuesday when Parliament gets back to work. Very interesting development. Many have asked why did they have to wait till this long to want to see what is on the table in terms of the debt restructuring program, and whether it's even important at all for this to go to Parliament. My guest this morning, Franklin Kujo, President of Imani Africa, Senyo Hosi, Convener, Individual Bondholders Forum, Alasan Suhini, Honorable, Member of Parliament, Tamale North, Dennis Abuaji, also known as Miracles, Member of the MPP Communications team. Gentlemen, once again, you're welcome to the program. Honorable, I'll start off from you. Why did we have to wait to this time to come up with this private members motion, wanting to see, as representatives of the people, what the domestic debt or the debt restructuring program really looks like for consideration? Won't this delay things?
Well, Salom, we have not had to wait. It is just as a result of the timetable of Parliament. And maybe I will say the irresponsibility of the finance minister. And I'll explain. The finance minister came to the House before the House government's budget for 2023. Now, in that budget, he made a point, and one you can call a pledge, to the House that because of our economic crisis, he was going to engage in debt, domestic debt. And in that, statement, that's why I say you can call it a pledge. He said he will come back to the House to brief us on the nature and, by extension, terms of that exchange program. So I say his responsibility because Parliament was on break. But if the government thought it was that urgent, like they have always done in the past, they could have recalled Parliament to present it before us. But once Parliament was not recalled, members had to wait until the time that we were supposed to resume. And so when we did, you will bear witness to the fact that the first business of the week did not have the finance minister, scheduled to appear before Parliament. It took members on our side, myself and Okudzeto Ablakwa, to raise that point that there was a need for the finance minister to be scheduled to appear before us that very week to, explain to us how far he has reached with what he promised the House he was going to engage in. Now, the Speaker of Parliament agreed with the request and directed the Business Committee to schedule the Finance Minister. But given his, busy schedules, he requested to do that this week. The House to brief us on where he was at as far as those negotiations were concerned. Now, after his presentation, we thought that, I mean, that is not what is expected of him. Yes, he has told us where he is at as far as the negotiations is concerned, but we also have a responsibility as a house. And so when you look at the Constitution, for example, Article 181, the whole of Article 181 is on loans and how government is supposed to contract loans and the role of Parliament in those contracts. And especially if you look at 1813, it says no loan shall be raised by the government on behalf of itself or any other public institution or authority otherwise than by or under the authority of an act of
I think we have Article 181
Yes.
that can be on the screen.
Yes.
So that viewers and listeners can follow the discussion. But
Okay.
go ahead, yes.
Yes. So you can look at 1813 too, especially. That talks about the fact that a loan has to be raised under the authority of an act of Parliament. As we speak, the debt exchange program, in plain language, are loans that government is seeking to raise. Now, the terms and conditions that were approved for those loans to be entered into in the past are not the same today. In the past, Parliament approved a budget allowing the finance minister to engage, people who were loaning money to government on certain terms. The terms have changed. Per the finance minister's own briefing, the terms of the negotiation that he is currently, engaged in have changed. And that is why there's a need for Parliament to examine those terms and determine if those terms are in the interest of the people of Ghana. And if you look at the PFMA 2016, that is the Financial Management Act 921. Section 56 is also very clear. It says, the terms and conditions of all government borrowing shall be laid before Parliament and shall not come into operation unless the terms and conditions are approved by a resolution of Parliament in accordance with Article 181 of the Constitution. It is clear that what government is engaged in is different from what it was given the authority to do previously. And that authority previously came from Parliament. And so we are seeking by this motion as a group to compel the finance minister to submit the terms that he says he is negotiating with before Parliament for consideration and possible approval or disapproval. That is what we are seeking to do. And you see, it is not just about the domestic debts. Honorable Mama Ayerga has raised this issue and has even written to the Bank of Ghana relating to financial institutions, where you have the finance minister acting like a law upon itself to establish an entity that is not governed by any law, GATT. No act of Parliament exists to govern GATT and its operations. And yet, he says that financial institutions that will suffer as a result of this debt exchange can go to GATT and through GATT get support from another entity that is not backed by law. Ghana Fiscal Stability Fund.
The
The
Financial
GFS.
Stability
Yes.
Fund, FSH, the 15 billion fund.
15 billion fund. The 15 billion, we are not told where it is coming from. From his briefing the other day on Thursday,
He said GOG and donor partners.
and
or
donor
development
partners, GOG and donor partners. As far as Parliament is concerned, we have not approved any money for that purpose. The donor funds also have to come through Parliament. We don't know which funds that is.
But can't we draw from the contingency fund?
Contingency fund, exactly. It's easy. Sometimes those are the reasons why these things must come to Parliament.
Contingency funds ain't got that quantum of money.
You see, you know the last time,
billion in that fund, and this is just 15 billion.
What has been approved?
It's not that much. In fact, this year, because of what the finance minister did with it when he appeared before the committee on his removal, and made reference to how he spent from it towards the construction of the National Cathedral, members were very critical about how much went to that fund, contingency fund, because clearly he revealed how government can be reckless with that fund. And so members were very critical. So not that much went into it. But even if that went into it, we need to know the law establishing the GSFS. Is that what it is? Ghana Financial Stability Fund. Yes, GFSC.
FSF.
Whatever it is. But the point is that we need to know the law governing that. Who are those going to manage that? GATT itself is not supported by law. Now this other animal that he is setting up that will administer 15 billion to the financial institutions, also not governed by law. And so if there are, liabilities in future, who will bear those liabilities? We need to know all of these things. And these are the reasons why we, as members of parliament on the side of the NDC, believe that it is very critical that the finance minister presents the details of the debt exchange program before parliament. Let us scrutinize it. Let us know what the terms are and whether or not those terms are going to, in the long term, benefit the state and benefit the people that are also going to be part of this program. Simple as that.
That appears to be the difficulty. So if Parliament, I don't even know what you mean by consideration, but maybe scrutiny. If Parliament is to get this to consider or scrutinize it, what can Parliament do? Can Parliament review or vary the terms? So for example, the debt exchange is happening. Some terms have been given, coupon rate at this for this long, tenure, maybe this percentage this year, etc. Can Parliament vary that? And when Parliament varies that, wouldn't that, set the whole thing back to zero? Finance Ministry will then have to go and re-engage with the people, Senor Hussein and his people, and everybody else, the GAB, the insurance, everybody else, before we can make progress. Is that not it? And how would that benefit, the country in terms of where we are? We've been told that if we don't get this approval from the IMF board by March, the economy could collapse and a whole lot of things. Are you conversant, or are you doing this bearing in mind what the consequences could be if we're unable to meet the timelines? But I'll let you respond to that after we take a break. And okay. Sonia Husu is here, Miracles is here, Franklin Kujotu is here. Everybody will get his time to speak on the matters. This is the big issue, coming to you live from our studios at 97.3 City FM. We'll be back and then continue with the matters. Don't go away.
Go to channel 363. On GoTV, access City TV on channel 182. On a digital TV, please press the menu button on the remote control and run a new search on your TV. Take note that without an antenna, you cannot access City TV on your television. City TV can be accessed on a free-to-air digital box like the GoTV and StarTimes box. City TV, it's your world.
My name is Gina, and this salon is where I work.
Good morning. Hey, good morning. You've already met your new colleague, have you?
Who was this? Could you be saying? He fell from.
Madam came in with a hot, sexy guy. And they were doing lobby.
Hey. Did Madam think men don't gossip?
The grapevine lies on my lap.
I've noticed a massive decline in our daily proceeds.
I suggest we fast and pray.
The spirit, hey, told told me today that I'll see a man in this salon.
He said his wife is dead?
Yes, she was sick.
Hey, what sickness? Aite, it is your mother that will get leukemia in that. It is your mother.
I don't like what you are doing at all.
Hey, you want to fight?
Showing every Wednesday at 7:30 p.m. with repeats on Friday at 10 p.m., Saturday at 6 p.m., and Sunday at 12:30 p.m. The Hairdressers is sponsored by Ebony Condoms.
On GoTV, access City TV on channel 182. On a digital TV, please press the menu button on the remote control and run a new search on your TV. Take note that without an antenna, you cannot access City TV on your television. City TV can be accessed on a free-to-air digital box like the GoTV and StarTimes box. City TV, it's your world.
You're welcome back to the big issue. My name is Selom Adunu. Big welcome to our TV viewers. And this morning we are looking at two issues which have become three because of some bad news we confirmed this morning about Christian Atsu. Christian Atsu, who we were all praying and hoping that will be retrieved from the rubble alive, has been confirmed dead. He was retrieved this dawn, but he was retrieved dead. He was retrieved whilst his elder brother and twin sister were present at the site together with an official of the embassy. That is quite some heavy news we've been talking about all morning. And indeed, the Foreign Affairs Ministry is issued a statement confirming that and also saying that the embassy in Turkey, which conveyed the sad news, indicates that the body was recovered early this morning. And so the other brother and co were there. Government extends to the widow and family of Christian Atsu our deepest condolences. The embassy is currently making the necessary arrangements with the assistance of the government of Turkey to have the body transported to Ghana for burial. So the public will be updated of the developments. And it says that they received the unfortunate news of the recovery of the body of Christian Atsu from the rubble of his apartment following the earthquake which struck on 6 February. And this comes after almost 12 days of the torturous search by the rescue team. Very sad news, and our condolences to the immediate family, the friends, Black Stars, the teams, everybody, all of us who are his lovers. So that's quite some sad news. Now, the other issues we are dealing with has to do with the domestic. I was in Parliament to brief Parliament on what he has done, and it's exempted some people, the pensioners, bondholders, etc., and the domestic individual bondholders. All of these guys have been exempted. However, just yesterday, some 5 minority MPs said no, the finance minister could not be left to do all of that alone. The representatives of the people have to be aware, and they must have a say in what Ken and his people are doing. So they have filed a private member's motion asking Ken Ofori-Atta to lay before Parliament the debt restructuring program for their consideration. And before the break, I was just trying to find out from the Honorable Alassane Suhini what that consideration means and what implication that will have on the IMF deal and all of that, and the economy by extension. And so that's what we are dealing with. And also, we'll look at the matters of the school placement program, grading system, etc. in the second part of the program. My guest this morning, Franklin Kujo, President of Imani Africa, Senyo Hosi, convener Individual Bondholders Forum, Alasan Suini, Member of Parliament, Tamale North, Dennis Abuaji Miracles, member of the MPP communications team. Yes, so Honorable, you were on the line trying to explain to us what the consideration means and what implication that will have on the arrangements the finance minister and his ministry have had, or government has had, with the bondholders should Parliament disagree with the terms right now. So
just to recap briefly, the broad policy was approved by Parliament in the 2023 budget with an assurance from the finance minister that the House will be briefed on the details. We are simply requesting for the details, and we are grounding our request based on Article 181 of the 1992 Constitution, supported by Sections 56 of the PFMA Act, Act 926. Those are the reasons why we are filing this motion to demand that the finance minister presents a detailed they get. Important that we recognize that there's everything to lose if we sacrifice speed, for due diligence. It is the reason why we are where we are today. Sacrificing speed for due diligence. Look, when the issue of ESLA being used and treated as a footnote in our reporting system came up, we did not pay much attention to it. And so we did not apply the brakes on borrowing when we should have, because we were assured that it was not part of our public debt. When the issue of Sino-Hydro came up, we were again dismissive of the need for us to properly scrutinize it. As a minority, we made those requests. Even our letters to the IMF and others were ridiculed by some people as trying to just frustrate government efforts. Our demand that it be reported accurately as part of our public debt was seen to just be propaganda and waste of everybody's time. It is the reason we are where we are today, because it has come to us too late that it has to be part of our public debt, same as Dachi and others. And so it is this, tolerance of our government's speed, sometimes not well thought through, that can be saved. And we are saying that it is time for us to do things well. Let us not sacrifice, scrutiny or due diligence for speed. Let us ensure that we are resolving this problem in a very holistic way to benefit the citizens and to benefit the state as well. And that is why we think that in that scrutiny, we'll be able to establish the role properly, so-called, GATT is supposed to play, and the Ghana the Financial Stability Fund is supposed to play, and how potentially it will not lead to corruption. We need to ensure that the guidelines are there so that nobody abuses it. Yes, so that nobody abuses what we have all agreed to undertake by way of restructuring
our economy. How much time, averagely or ideally, will you require to do all of this?
I think it is the time will depend on how fast the finance minister works. Because the finance minister, if even by Tuesday, or even when a Monday, if he demands a special sitting, he will get one. If he presents the details to the House can take the whole day or two to scrutinize it. I mean, sometimes than I'm sure the details of this negotiation that he has been engaged in. So let the finance minister, work fast. They should not even wait for us to debate this motion, and prolong things. If by Tuesday the finance minister, during the time that we are going to move the motion, arrives and requests, leave from the speaker to present the details, the focus will shift onto discussing the details and looking at how beneficial the negotiations are to everybody. And at the end of the day, if we need to make recommendations for changes to be done, we will do. Details that are speculated about. For example, we have been told about how some people had information and traded some of their bonds, before this whole negotiation started. I mean, in presenting the details, we'll get to know all of that, and we'll get to know the conditions under which those people got out of the negotiation, got out of the program before even the negotiation started.
Provided or submitted to Parliament, or you have somebody seated to be speaking to the document whilst you ask questions. How is that going to be?
Definitely, there are terms and conditions that have governed the negotiations. There are agreements that have been reached with the financial institutions, with the insurance companies, with the individual bondholders. The finance minister just needs to submit all of this for the committee of Parliament, for example, finance committee, or the entire House to look at it, and where clarifications are needed, they are sought.
I see. All right, so let me come to you. I mean, you have been in the thick of affairs, fighting and doing all of that. You got what you wanted. But does this come to you as a surprise that Parliament is now asking the finance minister to present to them for consideration the program, the debt restructuring program itself at this time?
Good morning, everyone. It doesn't. It is actually required of Parliament. So you realize at the onset of our advocacy, the first place we went to was Parliament, because a major activity as debt, that was not just debt interventions that we've had in a very long while, for sure beyond the past 30 or 40 years, practically it. So it was definitely something that the people's representative had to take a view on. You look at the PFMA, it is very clear what's supposed to happen in there. The terms and conditions, if you look at section 5.1, the terms and conditions of all government borrowings shall be laid before Parliament and shall not come into operation. Resolution of Parliament in accordance with Article 181, that's
section 56.
Yes, and if you look at section 2, for the purposes of subsection 1, Parliament may, from time to time, by resolution, approve standards and conditions for government borrowings. There are different ways the Minister of Finance gets this. He does that through the budget and the appropriation and all that process that he embarks on. But those terms and conditions must definitely be before. So there are standard terms for government bonds. That's why it's not too complicated. That is standard. So even when government does it, often, in recent times, you don't really issue a real prospectus, because the prospectus is as prior approved by Parliament. It's not being varied. So that's really what's there. The DDE has terms that are different from what the market has been used to. So definitely something that had to go to Parliament. The only thing here is, and there must be proper cooperation between Parliament and the responsibility for the failure for the economy. So that's not in question. So trying to throw threats at people is not a right approach. If you don't do this, the economy, who did it? Now you cause some. So you should be very modest about your engagement. Parliament has a responsibility, has a right in this matter. I mean, for nothing at all, considering the far-reaching implication of this, for good governance purposes, you don't even need a thing like this to be stated in the PFMA Act or in the Constitution. Before, reasonably, you should know that you should really gather broad consensus and momentum as far as the governance space is concerned. I mean, Professor Kusibotri of blessed memory, my affection for him is no secret. At last year's Independence Day lecture, he was clear that government needed political space to be able to achieve the turnaround that will be required. And this is just common sense. You know, forgive me, but this is something we make our governance and economics so complicated. It is not. It is not that complicated. You need space, you need support. You should have been courting that support months ago. But we've not seen that cooperation. So government, you must take responsibility for that matter. Don't come and say because of this is happening. You are responsible for it. But having said that, the minority too has to be very practical about our times. The need for speed cannot be compromised. You shouldn't mix too many issues. The DDE itself and its operation is not necessarily one and same. With the structures they are trying to put in with GATS, the structures we are trying to put in with the Financial Stability Fund, they are not the same. It's not time to also show your crutchy powers, because you end up with that, you be a minority in a country that doesn't exist. Because our situation is really dire. If this thing hits the fan, you know what hits the fan in this expression, but I can't say. If your God hits the fan, it will splash in everybody's face. And all of you who are driving V8, that Ghanaian I've been talking about, that is losing tolerance. They will come for you. And the minority is in the V8, the majority is in the V8. So you have to protect the system. The private people, myself, I'm trying to go to buy Tico. We'll become, we'll take straight bullet. You know, so me, I'm going to buy Tico. So if you are here, plan and buy your Tico if you are driving one. We have to fix the country. No two ways about that. So there's a need for proper cooperation. It will be counterproductive. They are looking for you to come into office in 2025. I don't think you want to come into office in a country that's almost not governable. So make sure you support the system. The failings of the state is already there. So my very good friends in the minority, I am somebody they describe as always in government. My friends cut across. But my friends there, this is honest feedback. It's not time for crutchy powers. It's time for us to turn around our country. So we need to work together for it. My friends in government, you need to be humble about the situation. Speak right and follow the processes. Cross the aisle and seek proper cooperation. That's what Ghana needs at this time. We don't need MPP, NDC. We need Ghanaians to take us through. So that is what we need at this time. So yes, he's right, but there's a need for a certain balance between the two. And they should separate the issues. The issue about got to be some long drawn-out conversation. Deal with one and then move on to the other. The problem are politicians and Ghanaians generally, we don't know how to compartmentalize our issues. We should know how to eat together in a restaurant, smile together, hug and kiss, and when we reach the car park, we beat each other. There are two different conversations. If one intertwines
with the other, the Financial Stability Fund, for
example. It doesn't. It doesn't.
Because the banks, the Ghana Association of Banks, their hope is on the fund.
Yes. It's a consequence.
They are not sure about
it's a consequence
how the fund
of this.
I'll tell you.
Yes.
That is a regulatory structure that's going to have to be used to. We as individuals, we said don't go in. But to be fair to them, they were muscled into it.
And they were regulated.
They were muscled into it. It's the reason why we got into this conversation. Exactly. If we look at the original DD, there's no. I've been trying to find the word voluntary. I didn't see it in the very first one. Till the fight started bringing that, even though they'll say that you participate at your own discretion.
The releases. The minister told the insurers that, of course, they have to still engage, but exemption was not an option. Yeah. So the exemption is not an option, then it means it's not voluntary.
It's not voluntary for them, but not for us. Yes. And not for we, the individual bondholders. So let's not mix that one too. I mean, we know where we are standing. But you see, to be fair,
sir, I get where you are coming from. Your responsibility is different from our responsibility as members of parliament. Yes. Your responsibility may be with the success of the DDEP.
Yeah, I think the point is
our responsibility. Our responsibility goes beyond the DDEP.
I agree,
and that is why we have to be concerned about the mitigating, structures that have been put in place. We cannot limit ourselves to the GDEP as you can.
No.
Because our responsibility goes beyond that.
I am not disagreeing with you,
Yes.
Suhini. I'm just saying that in managing this engagement as politicians in Parliament,
we should disintegrate
you
the
should
issues.
disintegrate
I
the
get
issues.
that.
Because some of them are tangent on us getting a program ahead of others.
Right.
The GATT story is not tangent on our. It's not critical to our
not
access.
directly.
I agree.
Yes,
Directly.
yes. It's about general sustainability, which we have to deal with. I agree. But the DDE is very central to our ability to get a fund program. So that we must prioritize. That we can sit down and say we are going through a certificate. Who is going through, and then they too should not say you have to put all of them together. That is all that's all I'm saying.
But eventually that discussion must be had.
That one must be had.
So this call by the minority appears to be what civil society will be happy with. Transparency, the representatives of the people must know about it, etc. What date or the timing is just right? Hello, Franklin. All right. Okay, so Franklin will join us soon on Zoom. Dennis, let me come to you. You sit with government, or you are government, so you have responses to all of these. Yes, the call by the minority should be something anybody interested in good governance should be happy with. What's the position? What's the position on that?
I don't see how anybody will have an issue with members of parliament doing their jobs and playing their role, sincerely speaking. And if those of us who used to run mock parliaments, don't have my president here. We used to have Senate. When you go to the Kwafo Senate and he's chairing, you see people firing and throwing in. I think these issues of procedure and processes and systems are not ones that anybody should even fight and debate. Even in parliament, people raise objections. It's either ruled or taken. It goes through a lot of processes. So many things happen. I haven't heard anybody in government having issues with the minority's motion, and I doubt if anybody would. That is their job. The key thing here is that the Minister of Finance in the budget for 2023, I think paragraph 136 or so, clearly mentioned in there to Parliament, which Parliament has approved, that government is going to pursue the debt restructuring. And he gave reasons why this needed to be done and all of that. And I heard Honorable Suyini, which he made a very important point, that the minister give them the assurance that he will come back to come and brief them. And Senor also said that, I'm sorry, Mr. President also said that, yes, it's always my president. Mr. President also said that when you look at the situation, timing is crucial. And so if the finance minister is saying, which I've heard him say, that the whole object is to go into negotiations, go into conversations with these bondholders and everything, come to Parliament and come and report to Parliament, which is already hinted Parliament on and all of that. For me, we can always argue and debate around the legalities and all of that, but it doesn't, change the fact that people need to get their money in the way they want. There are people who are very comfortable with the debt exchange. They will sign up for it. There are people, I know people who have bonds and they are okay with it.
That's true.
There are also others who feel that no, I want my money now and all of that. So we shouldn't also mix up the issues and pretend as if everybody is against the debt exchange. There are people who are seeing some good, opportunities in there which they want to take. So we need to just allow Parliament to do its job and allow the executive to also do its job, allow bondholders like Senor and I to also do our job. Because you'll be surprised the number of people who have, who are holding government bonds. And for us, we all feel that we must have our money in the way that is most convenient to us. But the convenience differ. Somebody wants it tomorrow. I've heard people say, I had planned it in a way where I would use to pay fees. I would use to buy medications. I would use it as my monthly stipend. For some other people, they've also projected it to some 10, 15 years from now and all of that. But we can go on to debate whether it should have gone to Parliament first, whether it should be varied and all of that. I was just looking at the Ministry of Finance website and I saw because I was looking for that document, the National Borrowing and Government Lending Guidelines. There's a guideline like that. Yes, there's a manual that guides floor of the House, they are going to go into that to see whether at the stage where we are, I think this was issued in October 2020, but the point we are at the moment in terms of the debt restructuring, has the finance minister gone beyond the period which, or the level which he should have gone to Parliament, or he's still within that period? If the finance minister is even coming to Parliament to come and even seek approval if there is a need to, he can't just come and say, I want to go and do debt restriction, I want to go and give them A, B, C, D. He should have gone into some negotiations and all of that and bring it to Parliament, tell Parliament the sort of negotiations he's been able to do with these people, how many people have accepted it, how many people have been accepted, and then appeal to Parliament with justifications as to why they should give approval for what he's been able to negotiate for. You understand? Because me, I'll be surprised Parliament will say, well, you've been able to convince Senor to restructure his bonds with you, but we are saying go and give his money to him. I don't think there's that. I don't think they should also make it look as if there's an ill intent. The Ministry of Finance informed you he's going to pursue debt restructuring. He's gone out there to go through. He's come back to brief you. Parliament feels that, well, you've briefed us. Can you bring this briefing for approval? I don't think there is any, and I don't also think we should impugn the finance minister necessarily to say that he's done anything wrong. Because even if there is something wrong, maybe his own understanding and interpretation of how we should get the processes done is what he has done. When it comes to the floor of Parliament and the conversations go on, we would at that point know, because I was looking at it, and if you look at the document, I think on page 17, it defines what domestic borrowing is. It tries to separate domestic borrowing from external borrowing. And it even goes ahead to even explain the difference between a loan and what these treasuries and securities and bonds are. So the next question is, maybe loans can go to Parliament for approval, but would these domestic bonds necessarily have to go to Parliament? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I don't understand. No, I don't know.
They should all go through.
I am only looking at the guideline. And my interpretation, for example,
but the guideline is subservient to the law.
If you look at domestic sources,
the guideline is subservient to the law.
Yeah,
so
but
the law
just hold on. So if you look at the guideline, domestic borrowing shall comprise funds sourced from government securities. It gives all the sources. Then it says that central government borrowings by means of loan agreement shall be on the terms and conditions approved by Parliament. So it's taking that line. Then it goes on to, I think, point 11, where it says treasury bills, notes and bonds in its strict sense are not loans, and therefore the terms being a market transaction cannot be determined by priority. So it's here.
But all borrowing of government is approved by Parliament.
Yeah, but I don't want to
do you understand?
No. So
the law is clear. But the constitution is
don't get me wrong. I'm looking at the guideline.
So the guideline is inferior.
I don't want to digress.
Nothing, guys.
I don't think he's litigating.
Loans or treasury securities.
The guideline is also giving a certain manual to give life to that arrangement.
That manual is October 2020. 2020. It was done after the PFMA Act. That's supposed to govern it. It was definitely done with that in mind. There's no disconnect. There's no conflict between the guideline and this. Exactly. It's talking about loans here, but this has to do with all government borrowings, which will include loans, whether you go to the securities market and raise funding from it. Based on what
the regulations are saying. Go through the guideline, it says it was developed with the Constitution and the PFMA line. But it goes on to separate what the loans that needs to go to Parliament.
So in essence.
But for me, all I am saying here is that I do not want us to jump and begin to impugn who has perpetrated illegality or not. At this point, per my understanding, and per the processes of one, he's already sought approval through the budget in November 2020.
That's what he's going to do.
That this was
after
what he
which
was
he
going
will come
to
back
do.
and
After which he will come and report to you. Now, what was he going to do? He was going to negotiate with Mr. President and I to let's go or exchange our debt within a certain period and a certain terms. Then he comes to brief us. The question is, would he come to Parliament and come and say, this is the terms I'm going to give Senior? Would you approve of it for me before I go and see him? What if I go to Senior and Senior doesn't, agree? Look at all the variations that have gone on.
So for you, the time is just right.
I think the time is
done
just
with
right.
it.
I think he's
so
done
it's
with
good
it.
time for him.
I don't think we should litigate everything.
Very well. That's interesting. Franklin, you guys should be happy about this. Miracles here, or Dennis, who speaks for government, spokesperson, a communicator for government, is saying that he sees nothing wrong with the request of the minority. That should come to you as some good news. Civil society, transparency, good governance, etc. The minority appears to be calling for that now. And from if what Dennis is saying is anything to go by, then it means that we're all on the same page.
Not necessarily, because it's I cannot preempt the sort of responses to the motion or the argument that is going to go.
No, but in principle,
all I am saying is that in principle,
yes,
Parliament is allowed to do that.
Yes.
If it gets to the floor of the House and there are...
It's not allowed, it's required.
It's required. The law allows them.
So that's what they are doing. So in principle, you are saying that...
I am not against that.
There's nothing wrong with that.
But on the floor, there may be debates for and against whatever it is that is filed. What it's carried would definitely be in line with the law. And so if the finance minister or those who are going to debate on the floor of the House feels that no, there's no need for approval to be sought on the floor of the House, that debate will go on and one will be carried, the other one will be thrown out. If at the end of the day they feel that, well, it needs approval, I am done with negotiations, I have come to present it to you for approval, it should, but for me, I don't think we should litigate the essence of somebody tabling this motion.
Very well. Franklin, you have the floor.
Well, good morning to you, my friends in the studio. Good morning, everybody. Look, I think clearly we really should have had this, what I call legislative guardrails guiding this whole process even before we got to this point. Don't forget, time is of the essence. I mean, we are racing against time in order to get a deal with the IMF. So even though there's fundamentally nothing wrong with the request by Parliament or the minority side to have these negotiations that have gone on before them, I think seriously we should have had this conversation way before we reach this point. Why am I saying that? You see, as clearly the finance ministry was left to impose rights and obligations on the go. I mean, it was improvising as we went along. And these were actually getting into quite uncharted waters. We were clearly bankrupt, and there was, at the minimum, some conversation, bipartisan conversation that should have happened to guide this process so that we can smoothen the gray areas. Don't forget, Greece went through a similar patch. At least for the purposes of the voting mechanisms were changed in Greece in order to allow the conversation around bankruptcy to be had before they finally got out of before the debt exchange program was finalized. So I think that, clearly speaking, we should have had this conversation so that would have been guided, for the finance ministry would have been guided, so that we wouldn't be having even the whole conversation around postponing dates here and there without any proper consultation. And all of those things could have been, shepherded properly from a bipartisan approach in Parliament. So for me, even though, yes, it's a scam now, so much time has been wasted, and who knows? I mean, what if the Parliament decides to throw a spanner in the works and says that everything you seem to have done probably is illegal, and that there's some amount of and this would have still been thrown into some sort of a limbo. So I sincerely think that, yes, better late than never, but again, it's at the peril of wasting a lot of time that the government doesn't have. It's very important we should have had this conversation. I note that the Attorney General initially suggested that laws cannot be passed to retrospectively vary the rights of people. But that was not what Parliament was likely to do, really. I mean, I don't think even in the Greek example, they passed laws to retrospectively affect the rights and obligations, if you like, of creditors. It wasn't the case. So the point that Attorney General was making was actually quite moot. Don't forget that in 2016, when we had to do the banking restructuring, we had to apply a law that was passed in 2016. Most of these banks that were repossessed, if you like, were already established even before the law the law was passed in 2016. But they had to go through it, right? And so there must be, and especially also because of the fallout from the banking crisis that we had, especially when suggestions were being made that it could have been done better, it was done in a heavy-handed manner, was exactly the reason why this debt exchange program should have had some bipartisan parliamentary, should I say, guidance. So yes, it's happened. We need to go back, but I fear that this would protract a little more and then possibly waste everybody's time, really. I mean, we could have avoided this particular plan.
But what do you think the posture of the finance ministry or minister should be in respect of this? Should you just say, okay, this is what we're asking for, have it, let's make progress? Or you think it should get down to the wire where the motion will be debated, the motion will have to be voted upon, etc.? All wasting time and dragging it. What do you think?
Well, something novel could have happened. I mean, I'm not in the minds of parliamentarians, but certainly if I'm in parliament, I'll be interested in knowing the fiscal readjustment program the government has. The government itself is likely to travel with the country, for the simple reason that yes, people have made the argument that Parliament approved of whatever the finance minister was doing right now. But we are bankrupt, for crying out loud. I mean, we are in uncharted waters, and for that reason, if I were in Parliament, one of the things I'll be requesting of the finance ministry or the government would have shown me exactly what your fiscal readjustment plan is, because you cannot be imposing, in a very unilaterally the burden on how do I call it, on creditors, right? So we need to get back to basics, as in what we need to do in order to get the economy out of the hole. I think Parliament should be concerned more about that and ask the finance ministry, now that you have done this, we know that we should have had a bite before you went ahead, but now that you are through with it, we would not like to put spanner in your works, but now show us exactly, and let's all discuss and decide that you have a credible fiscal readjustment plan that will help the country come out of its doldrums. I mean, without that type of conversation, why are we even having a debt exchange program? To go back to the same behavior again? I mean, and the finance ministry, it was essentially tasked to come up with fiscal readjustment programs or suggestions in order to be guided. That conversation seems to have fallen on deaf ears, and I don't think we are hearing much of it. I would suggest to he probably should be more interested in government's part of the deal, as in trying to get up its launch in order to prevent what I'll call the bedlam from reoccurring. So it's pretty much part of the conversation that must be had. Otherwise, clearly would have lost the plot.
I see. Let me come back to Dennis. So the DDP essentially is concluded. What's next now? And people have questioned why finance minister, for example, will allow or will leave pensioner bondholders to be picketing at the finance ministry for all that while, when he could have just given them what they wanted, which they got eventually. The optics of that wasn't really nice. Former Chief Justice and all of these guys would have to, had to come and picket at the place. People sick, old men who have served this country. The optics were just no big deal. Why couldn't you just write to them that yes, what you wanted has been granted, which was what they were actually calling for? Aside from the minister making the pronouncement, they said they wanted it written. So if it wasn't any big deal, why didn't we do this long time? But we left the people to come and picket for 7-8 days with all the pictures and all of that.
So I think that we first of all need to admit the situation we find ourselves in, and then also understand the circumstances under which the finance minister has to embark on this program, and also acknowledge that there are various interest groups in this particular sector, and it's a negotiation. As for negotiation, you can only be sure of what you are presenting, but you cannot preempt the offer or what the person you are at the table with will be bringing on board. You remember how initially even the pension schemes were part, and then at some point they had to make a case and then they were exempted and all of that. I think the also be fair to the finance minister that he didn't just ignore them, because whilst they were there, he was having negotiations with them, and he would have wished that whilst the negotiations
oh yes, water, because he had said earlier that they were exempted, and they said they wanted it to raise.
Yes, no, relax. He said, you know, it's not an issue of being exempted, and I think Senior made that point, and people were taking it. The thing is voluntary.
Yes.
Let's just understand that the thing is voluntary. Okay, so if you don't sign up, you're exempted. That principle.
But if you want an entry who is worked at the SEC,
no, it is not.
Years, you know, distinguish between issuer exemption and
exemption. We shouldn't do this. We shouldn't do this to ourselves. Okay. The thing is voluntary. You have a bond with me. You've purchased my bond. I said this is what I want to offer now, so that we don't go through A, B, C, D. If you want, come and take. If you don't come and take, you're not part. You're not part of that offer. You are part of whatever you are holding. And whatever you are holding is a financial instrument. And unless we want to pretend as if we don't know what financial instruments we hold are, that there are risks inherent and there are gains in there, then we can have that argument. But so long as you are holding a financial instrument, there is a principle that, yes, government bonds are safe and secure. But there are examples of government bonds failing. So before you go and procure or purchase a government bond, you should have heard of Greece, you should have heard of all those people. And then know that there's a 1%, 2% possibility of failure. We should understand that. Whether we like it or not, we are there. And then the finance minister says that it is voluntary. You know, when you make this point and you don't take care, you become emotional and you draw in emotions, you'll be affecting the sensitivities of the pensioners. And that's why I don't want to even go into the The point is that it's a very sensitive matter. No senior citizen should be seen in that state. It was unfortunate. But we should be fair to the finance minister. He did not sit down aloof. When they came, he met them and explained the voluntary nature of the arrangement to them. The point is that I even heard him addressing them on TV. And at some point, he even told them that I'm just coming from a meeting with your leadership. And so I'm surprised you are still here. And that's why I have come, in spite of the meeting I've held with your leadership, to hear if there are any other issues that they probably didn't mention. I watched it, the video is there. And then some people kept on. In fact, the lady who spoke kept on saying that they want to be exempted. And that was still difficult to understand. But it is not a pleasant scene. That notwithstanding, we should separate the sentiments from the facts. If we do that, then we are being fair to every citizen. If we don't do that, then we are being unfair to all ourselves and we are just being hypocritical. Now, so if I can just wrap up. Now, the finance minister has been quite clear. The debt exchange has ended. Some 18% thereabouts of pensioners actually, signed up for it. All those who didn't sign up are not part of it. You don't need any documents to state that you are not part.
If you didn't participate.
But he eventually wrote to them as they wanted.
Oh yeah, but I mean, those are all part of it.
But it was interesting that he said he had to speak to the president. He had to go talk to the president before, responding to them. If there was really nothing, why couldn't he just have written?
Let me also answer that question quickly. That we cannot say there is nothing. There was a huge pot, I think 137 billion or so, that the finance minister wanted to exchange.
At the last
to exchange. Then they kept going down and going down and going down. You had a negotiation trying to save a whole economy. You don't just go out there and throw freebies to everybody that comes forward and say, give it to me, I don't want to be part. You continue to engage. So if there was some continuous engagement between the finance minister and pensioners, we cannot say that, ultimately some people have been exempted and why wasn't it done earlier? It was a negotiation. That had to travel a certain course so that we get to where we are today. Now we are done. It's been successful, at least. If you didn't sign up, you are not part. I don't think we should go back to why this. It was a negotiation. Okay, why were the pension funds not exempted from the get-go? Why? Then eventually they had to make a case before they were exempted.
All right, so let me hear you on this.
One, I take part responsibility for this exemption work. But this conversation has nothing to do with exemption.
Because I recall after your meeting with the minister, when the minister said you guys could self-exempt, I mean, you were pretty much fine.
No, well, because nothing has changed. He hasn't. And one little step backwards, the DDE has not been designed as an offer from government. It is designed as an invitation for you to make an offer to government. Meaning, I'm telling you, showing you which robe you can come and take and come and kill yourself or something. Or this is how I want you to come in. And if you come on these terms, I would accept it. That's what the DDA has done. It's an invitation to treat. It is not an offer that anybody is signing up and accepting. When you sign on the DDE, you are the one making government the offer. Now, government has said that, Mr. A, this group of people, you are eligible to make me an offer. I will break it down. Maybe if I talk about marriage, it makes it easier. So, like arranged marriages. So, your house, you have decided that family A, family B, family C are the only places where you take an offer for your sister. Family D, there you have cancelled them out. So, if family C people are not interested in coming to participate, they can't have your daughter. They can't have your sister. It's just as simple as that. That was the offer on the table. Nothing about exemption. So the pension funds were not considered eligible bondholders in this particular offer. So they were described as ineligible in the DDE 3. So all of us, everybody else was eligible to make an offer. Now the question has been raised. So why were you shouting? They want the exemption. Well, we use the word exemption because that made it easy for people to sort of understand. So I take part responsibility for it. The reason why we went shouting, go to the DDE 1. There's no word in there called voluntary. None. Then you are better than the computer, who cannot even find voluntary. The time this thing comes in is in the advocacy. The government now comes categorically, even in the last DD, that's after our negotiations, that no one was obligated to participate. And then government starts and now singles out individual bondholders, but didn't single out banks. It didn't single out insurance because it was clear that now you were free to participate. That's why I said that in the beginning, it was voluntary by force, because the banks and co, even though they were supposed to now participate, and the word voluntary was not even stated in there, the government was using policy to force them to participate through the central bank, telling them that you are going to 100% risk the bonds, so you can't even keep it on your books. Effectively, your license is at risk if you don't participate. So people were forced to participate. The same thing was done to insurance. When individuals were mentioned, we did not know what government was going to use to force us in. So our option to participate was not real. It was voluntary by force. Till we had a negotiation. And then after the negotiation, we got... And also to make sure that the DDE 3 also reflect that. Now the finance minister said that, look, guys, I have a view on the market that if all individuals opt out, some individuals may struggle with bonds.
It will be difficult to trade them.
It won't be difficult. You won't have as much trade. The main reason why he was saying that is not because of the size, even though he refers to that. And I'll tell you that on the technical grounds. Because they have practically stopped banks indirectly from holding these bonds. And on the market, the biggest movers or traders of the bonds are banks. They are not individuals or pension funds. They are banks. So if you take the banks for out of participating in there, in his mind, you guys are few. You will not be able to trade much. So it is the new bonds that the banks will be trading more amongst themselves. So it is not just the side, but the players. Because the banks, when they hold any of the old bonds, under the current structure by the Bank of Ghana, not the DDE. So do you see, like I said, they are using policy and law.
Yeah.
There are two things. So legally, you will know that you are fine, but they'll use policy to squeeze you in. That is forcing the banks not to hold that paper. Meaning you hold, if you put 100 million cedis in an old bond, run as a bank that way. So that for that reason, he thinks that people will participate more in trading the new bonds than the old bonds. I tell him no. The market of individuals is not that big. Right now, with the pension, with the CIS going into it, maybe you have about 10 billion. We have to look for the data. We have about 10 billion left. Pension funds are contributing about 6 billion in the privately managed pensions, not SNIT. 6 billion every year. With us trading ourselves and pension funds rather looking for higher returns, why would I think that we will not have a in case there's something happening on the secondary market? That I tell you, Mr. Minister, before this DD and after this DD, you have never been responsible for what happens on the secondary market for anybody. So there's no point bringing this into the conversation. Well, he's giving his opinion and giving people an option so that those who may find value in his opinion can participate. Those who do not find value in his opinion may just not participate. But if you have to participate, I will improve your terms. And we said, yes, go ahead and improve those terms so people can have the option. Now he comes up with the DDE. And to be honest, true to God, unless you are technically not competent, you realize that under some circumstances, the new offer he brought individuals were economically viable.
They were better.
They were, yes, have to be not better. I mean, generally was better than the DDE. But I'm talking about your original bonds, the old bonds.
Okay.
And I cited examples. So if you followed our town hall, we're very honest about all the information relevant to it, so people can make informed decisions. If you have a corporate bond, I mean a quasi-corporate bond like ESLA or Dachi bond, and you have a tenor beyond 2028, and your thing is subject to 25% tax, personal income tax. If I don't 2032, I don't know where we will be. So if I can get my money quickly in 2027 and 2028, I might as well take it and run away. So people may have different views, but we recommended don't participate, not because of the economic grounds, but more on the legal grounds. Because with these new bonds, you have given your right to sue government and attach its assets. When you read the DDE, it states it clearly that you are out. But your old bonds don't kick you out. These are the terms that have changed, which must go to Parliament. These are part of the terms that have changed, that must go to Parliament. So we told people, don't participate, because legally you'll be worse off, and there's so much uncertainty on the market going forward. Now, to this issue about exemption after, how can you exempt somebody from something he didn't participate and the thing is over?
He's not part of.
You understand? But because that thing had entered people's head, the perception that you had a difference between self-exemption and exempt, that is totally wrong. We were very careful. We took proper legal advice from the big weights as far as securities law in Ghana is concerned. Practice. People who practice and actually been drafting government security prospectus and agreements since NDC through to MPP and are all part of it. We took 3 major and paid big money. And leverage big relationships to get proper counsel. We were very clear. In this matter, government is not an issue. Be careful. Government has not come to say that your existing bonds, I want to modify the thing that I have new bonds. Your old bonds, I want to take it and then give you this. He is technically an acquirer. He's actually swapping. And that takes you back to what the PFMA Act, with your permission. Look at section 65. 64 rather, section 64. And you see, I want to go to section 65 before. It talks about the status of government debt. A government debt is an absolute and unconditional financial obligation of the government. So government debt is government debt. There's no ranking of somebody over the other debt. It is unconditional. Now you go to the other one, 64. That talks about market operations. Section 1. Subject to subsection 2, the minister may, in accordance with debt management objectives and the medium-term management strategy, undertake other market transactions, including entering financial swaps. This is 1. Other derivative instructions on behalf of government for the purposes of managing the risk of government under various financial transactions. Then B, offering buybacks and exchanges of government debt securities. And at the end of it, it talks about the fact that number in point 2, that the transactions are subject to the approval of Parliament. And that goes back to better. Yeah, absolutely right. But the government liability is absolute. So when you don't participate, technically you are not part of the offer. You have not offered government a thing. So you have already exempted yourself. If you look at the structure, there's no exempt word in this thing. Or self-exemption. That's why in his letter, the minister, when he was writing to us on the 31st of January, he said individuals are free not to participate.
Very well.
So you either participate or not participate. So this thing he's done at Parliament.
What was honest?
But it gives people, mental comfort. So it's okay.
Very well. So yes,
okay.
we're running out of time on this. So Suni, let me just hear you.
Yes, you see, I'm humbled that around this table we all seem to agree that the motion that has been filed by our colleagues on behalf of the minority is necessary and is the right thing to do. And it is just even further emphasized, maybe just in response to the little issue that Miracles raised about bonds. By section 64 that Senor just shared with us of the PFMA Act. And I will just quote that again with your permission. It says, subject to subsection 2, the minister may, in accordance with the debt management objectives and medium-term debt management strategy, undertake other market transactions, including 1, entering into financial swaps and under derivative transactions on behalf of government for the purpose of managing the risk of government under various financial transactions. 2, offering buybacks and exchanges of government's debt securities. And C, offering early repayment of loans before the date of maturity of the loans. And all of this under section 2 of says that a transaction under subsection 1A is subject to the approval of Parliament. So clearly, I'm humbled that around this table we all agree that the motion filed is necessary and the finance minister must comply, and then we can make progress. But I just want to disagree a little when the suggestion is made as if to say the pensioners were driven more by emotion rather than the law and the fact as far as their demand for exemption is concerned. You see, and Senor, makes the point that for me drove these pensioners to engage in the demonstrations that they engage in. How do you tell me that I can choose to not be part of a program, but you are the government, you are big brother here, you are telling the market that if I do not sign on to the program, what I am holding may become less valuable.
Worth less, or maybe, yes, maybe cannot be.
Do you get it? And so it is not about, it is not, even if it is a possibility, even if it is at that point you are doing propaganda against my bond.
Right, so
do you understand?
I think we need to wrap up on this. So yes, we need to wrap up on this and go to the second issue. Yes.
For example, I don't see you regularly here during the week. I'm sure it is as a result of your arrangement with your management. So you have not self-exempted yourself from coming to work during the week. So you have no liabilities. And so if you are going to another company...
about whether he has self-exempted.
I'm trying to process it.
You're trying to process it.
Yes.
So you see, there's a difference. The point I'm trying to make is that there's a difference between self-exempting and then the issuer exempting you. So if your managers exempt you from coming to work during the week, you have no liabilities.
Okay.
And if you want to even switch companies, that...
Exempted.
Because you know...
This.
But he had no business leading that.
Take responsibility for it. You went into this business selling fear.
Selling fear.
So even when the thing is true, people are still afraid.
All right, so guys,
look, even when the man said it and he wrote it twice, look. The man has practically had to write this straight.
And you said something to Senor. You said something. You said something about threatening people. But from the beginning.
But I want to read something Gabby has also.
You collapse the economy, and then you are making it look like if we do not help you, the
Exchange program, new exemptions, and calls for parliamentary approval. Indeed, we saw the CJ sometime last week and this week. Were affected in the comments he made. Gabby has also written something that we thought or we think is in the public's interest and fairness to him, because we carried the story to also put out. Quite lengthy, but let me see if I can just do a quick one. Said, I've deliberately chosen not to respond to Sufai Akufu's reaction to me. Much of it was understandably emotional, but unfortunately insulting. As you know, it is hardly in my character and practice on social media to engage in back and forth with comments on my views. Several examples of this can be found on my Twitter pages and Facebook wall. I see those who may choose to respond to my views with insult are exercising their right to free speech in ways that perhaps only they know best. I say my piece, move on, and leave it to others to say theirs. However, they choose to do it. That has been my attitude to free speech for a very long time. Reciprocal tolerance. I have been in the media space for long enough, for over 3 decades now, and therefore used to criticizing and being criticized in return, however harshly. But I think it is helpful for a person like you to know this, that is why I'm writing this to you directly. I respect the right of Sufai Akufu to stand up for what she believes in and criticize as she sees fit. But respectfully, I should also be allowed to share my thoughts and disagree with her on the substance of her action, which is exactly what I did when I did, by stressing that the timing of a supreme voice as former CJ was to me problematic. Picketing for pensioners to be exempted is fine, but doing so after, 1, a much improved offer for individual bondholders, especially pensioners. 2, which they still had the option to not participate, that's self-exempt. 3, choosing to do so when the invitation to the exchange the old bonds had come to an end. And 4, even threatening legal action, which made me wonder what the course of action could be. I felt she hadn't a good appreciation of the issues. That was my point. We had come to the end of it. It should be recalled that I was one of those who publicly on my Twitter page called on government when the original exchange offer of 0 coupon rate for 2023, etc. was made, to check the numbers again and consider exempting pensioners who were individual bondholders and improving the offer for the rest of us. So I was never insensitive to the issue of pensioners. In the end, as we soon found out, only 1,214 individual bondholding retirees chose to participate. However, overall, some 85% of bondholders in the end participated. A mighty boost for the program, with government repeating several times the assurance that the old bonds of those who self-exempted will be honored. I found her solidarity, timing, and in particular what is sought to achieve mightily curious. and yet I did not insult her with my criticism. She opted to express her views publicly against what the government thought was necessary to save the economy for the over 32 million Ghanaians out there. And I too exercise my right as well as a citizen to for what Gabby to have to say on this matter of the Super Akufu and everything. You know, we carried that, and so we thought it was important to put this as well. Thank you so much, gentlemen. We thank you so much, Senior Osi, and the rest. We will come back.
People should allow everybody to express their views.
You have a right to protest. Gabby also has a
right. I'm trying to gag Gabby. I think it's the most.
Yeah, so he spoke. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much, guys. We take a short break, return and get into education discussion. Don't go away.
Sense, yet yes, as you talk, now so form that so yet D. Nesenti, Yasha Bibi Super Crowd, ya mamma. Yatuni Dean say, High Sense Super Promo. Yanyamane Buono, a sash in Nebio. Impoya Fasopo, a year free so, said your bayan for so dear mount. Ya call first come, first serve, and Yamano sa, na sa, High Sense Super Promo. Away showrooms in na. I will Ghana for na. I said, High Sense one amount 5 years manufacturer defective warranty. Ye never border from change ya kenina. Change ya kenina. Na ye papa change ya kenina. Kayo, everything 28th February, I call him 8th March. A ye High Sense Super Promo. High Sense, everyday prices for everyday people.
The Heritage Caravan 2023 is officially sold out. Get ready for 7 exciting days of adventure through 14 incredible regions of Ghana with the promise of a rich cultural experience, introspective historical visitations, and exhilarating field days with nature. Prepare for 7 amazing days of a road trip filled with the sights, sounds, and the aura of a diversified people. Get ready because we are going on the expedition of a lifetime to discover Ghana from the 4th to the 11th of March on the Heritage Caravan 2023. Pack your bags and let's set off on this spectacular tour from Greater Accra through to the Volta region, through to Eastern region, Ashanti region, Upper East region, Savannah region, Northern region, through to Northeast, Bono region, Ahafa region, Bono East region, Western North, Western region, and the Central region of Ghana. A journey full of fun, education, information, wonderful memories, and great bonding moments await you on the Heritage Caravan 2023. The Heritage Caravan 2023 is powered by City TV in partnership with the Ghana Tourism Authority, with support from City FM and proudly sponsored by Holag Ghana, the European Union, Malta Guinness, Ebony Condoms, Royal Company Limited, National Lotteries Authority, Baltic Mineral Water, and Colgate Natural Extracts.
Is this Nani floor?
Yes.
What is it with pig feet?
No.
Ghana is a country that's full of historical antecedents. A touch of ethnicity. And what is ethnicity if it's not from your village? The season of all things Ghanaian is upon us, and we are here to celebrate an aspect of our Ghanaianness with the Back to Your Village Food Bazaar, happening live from the 25th to the 26th of March 2023 at the forecourt of the Accra Metropolitan Assembly. Come, let's treat ourselves to delectable, authentic Ghanaian cuisine from the northern, the middle, and the southern zones of the country that reflect our our true cultural diversity. While at it, we'll be jamming to genuine Ghanaian music amidst games, competitions, storytelling, and so much more. Interested vendors of indigenous foods are invited to register. Don't let this be another missed opportunity. Call 0205-973-973 to book a stand and be part of the Back to Your Village Food Bazaar 2023. Anyamime, the country make hot too. Resounding music, heartfelt camaraderie, and remind ourselves why Ghana is still our home at the Back to Your Village Food Bazaar on the 25th and the 26th of March 2023 at the forecourt of the AMA from 8 a.m. each day. The Back to Your Village Food Bazaar is powered by City TV with support from City FM and is sponsored by Volta Ghana Limited and Malta Guinness.
You're welcome back to The Big Issue. We are live on 97.3 City FM. We are on Facebook, YouTube, and we are on TV, obviously. We are discussing now the issue about education. This week, the Ministry of Education and the GES, or the Computer School Placement Program, released the placement results of BEC candidates for secondary schools. Over 300,000 students were placed, but 165,000 or in excess of that could not be placed, and so they have to do what we call self-placement. The question is, why should so many people not be placed? What happened to their system? Why do they have to now go through this on their own to get? The number of candidates, was less than the number of spaces declared. So why couldn't we match, or why couldn't we place everybody? Whether you like the school or not, you are placed. Why did we have to go through all of that? We will have some answers on that. Indeed, the matters of protocol and the fact that certain people get certain grades, they make it to some schools. People with better grades don't make it to those schools because those looking from protocol, etc. We'll also look at that and see what can be done about the protocol. To be fair, protocols may be important in some instances because, for example, if it's a mission school and the church that set up the school wants a few spaces, it will not be proper to deny them of that opportunity. So there could be a thing can be said for protocol. How about the public versus private school thing? We discussed this some time ago here. Not done by with this 30% policy. We'll look at all of that. My guest for this segment, Dr. Clement Park, MP for Busa South, Deputy Ranking Member, Education Committee of Parliament, Kofi Asare, Executive Director, Africa Education Watch, and Kofi Kwesi Kwating, Head of Communication at the Ministry of Education, will join us and we'll take a view from Franklin Kujo as well, Imani Africa. Gentlemen, you are welcome to the program. So let me start off with you, Kofi Asare. We spoke about this a week or two ago, and we're hoping that this time the situation will improve. However, of course, the Education Ministry said it has improved. Last year, the number of people who were not placed and so had to do self-placement in terms of percentage was higher than this. There's been a 3 percentage point drop in the number of people who are to self-place. Why can't the placement system place everybody so that you check, you get a school, you don't have to go through all of that? Of course, there will be a few issues to be dealt with, but not 165,000 people. What can we be doing about this to improve it?
Morning to your cherished audience. The computerized school placement system will not place you in a school you didn't choose. If you chose a school and chose to be a boarder, it will not place you in that school as day. If you chose a school, chose science, chose boarding, the computer will not give you science or day. It won't give you business or boarding. So the computer respects your decision. So if you select all the schools, is it five or six?
I think six.
If you select all the schools, computer will, but the computer will respect that within the competition. within the system. Okay, so competitively, you may be outclassed, or you may be out of the schools you selected, depending on the results that the BEC produces. So that's in simple terms why you always have an average of 30% of students going through. Okay. Now, for me, the only way to avoid that is to have the BEC results before undertaking placement. If BEC results are made available to students, and 1 week after, or let's say even the next day, students are asked to do the selection of their schools, because they have an idea about their own performance. If you knew you had a grade 12 and you attended a private school, you won't get close to any category A or category B schools. So you won't be selecting schools based on nothing, but you'll be selecting schools based on your BEC results, which is available. So the only way, or the only practical way to do away with the self-placement system is that let the BEC results be
before.
Yeah.
Okay. So that
like the regular.
So that one, you know your smoothness level, as they say. So when you're choosing the school, you're choosing it in a certain way. But that may not entirely, because if I got 6 ones, maybe a lot more people who want to go to Wesley Girls, for example, got 6 ones. All of us could go there, and the same problem may arise.
The 6 ones are not the ones who are going through self-placement. If you all got 6 ones, the computer will move to the next criteria. Check your day boarding, next criteria. Check the number of, okay, so 6 ones, okay? Then check the number of ones you got in all your subjects beyond the 6, your best 6.
And even Ross course.
Then it will go to Ross course. You know, then it will come to looking at your actual scores in English first, maths, science, and social studies in that order. So there are ways in solving that issue within the system. I'm saying that if students have an idea about their BEC results before selecting their schools, it will significantly, if not totally, eliminate the issue of self-placement. Because by the time you are selecting a particular school, you should be aware of the cutoff, both by aggregate and by, if you like, by raw scores. So you won't get close to where you know genuinely that you don't qualify. And when we were doing when we were in school, after our A levels, we were selecting our after our O levels. For some of us who attended schools without sixth form, I attended Benkum Secondary School, Benkum Senior High School, one of the best schools, you know, in Africa. Now, when I completed my O level, I knew my results. Okay, so I chose a school that I knew I was going to university. So if you knew you had ABB or you had BBC, okay, I think I had BBC. You won't go close to admin.
Or DDE.
You won't go close to admin because you won't get admin.
Yes.
You won't go and waste your time there. So it always serves a useful purpose when the students selecting their school has a fair knowledge or an idea about their results, so that it doesn't create a situation of the.
So what you're calling for really is what we see for the universities. So before you apply to the university, you know, usually you have a sense of medicine. You've not been able to make the A's
because
you know what to do.
Because you know your WASSCE results.
Yes.
Okay, so some of them do results are waiting, fine. But traditionally, it was about having a WASSCE result before applying.
Yes.
So you know the cutoff. So it's not something too new. I think that's one way we can practically eliminate.
Yes, that's quite very interesting. But in this, like this time around, we see that the results came, and the placement. I mean, the time between the result and the placement, we didn't have a lot of time between. So at what time are you now going to ask them to choose schools? It may take some 2-3 days to do, and that takes away from the time. Why they didn't release the result early? Perhaps they had their own difficulties. Papers cancelled, a whole lot of things. So a lot of time was not allowed in between. And the placement itself takes time. They're putting everything together. And now we have a reopening date that has been predetermined usually. So now the there for parents and the students to prepare. Won't this thing you are suggesting, albeit laudable, compound this particular problem we are seeing now?
We are in an emergency situation. Our academic calendar is still being run with an ambulance service approach. There are countries that have virtually reset their academic calendars after COVID, like Sierra Leone, for instance. Some of them have reset it, and they are back to the August-September, commencement of the academic year, in line with YX academic YX, calendar. Ours is still not yet aligned. We have a challenge with a double track system that doesn't make it very, very easy for us to quickly scale back and say that we are starting the academic year 1 month earlier in my year 1, 2 months, earlier in year 2. If you recall, after COVID, the then education minister rolled out a plan that it was going to take us about 4 years to get back to the September academic year. And when you look at the plan, it was about reducing the deficit by 1 month every year. We are in year 3, but we are still doing admissions we are going to school in February, right? Instead of September. It means we are not making progress. It's because we still have double track running. I think that if we are able to reset our academic calendar to start in, and I think this year, the academic calendar has been designed such that if we're able to follow it religiously, next year we should go to school earlier than February. So if we are able to reset it to factory default, let's say by 2025, it is always possible to have this arrangement. But what I'm saying is that the best way to eliminate the issue of self-placement is to ensure that students have their results before selecting school, so that
issues. We spoke to one of the officers at the Solution Center, and they said about 90% of the issues submitted that day and the day before have been resolved. From what Kofi Asare just explained, it means that it will be difficult to do away with the self-placement, especially in large numbers. I don't know what you think about his idea or his suggestion about selecting schools, after the results have been released, as happens at the higher level.
Well, Salon, let me say good morning to you and my good friend Kofi, to the people of with good health and life, to be reconsidered, to continue doing what we believe we are doing in the interests of Ghanaians. And I think that is why I am here. My own thinking is that the suggestion that Kofi Asare is making is reasonable, and it is worth considering. Because truly, I've also been monitoring what has been going on. I've been receiving calls from parents, from friends who are parents, from associates, to do with some of these challenges with regards to the placement system. And I think the bulk of the calls that I've received and the request that the students who have not been placed, even the parents are quick to admit, that if I had known that this is what my ward was going to get, I perhaps would not have encouraged the ward to select grade A schools. I saw a video yesterday where a woman was happy to even be given the opportunity to place her ward in the grade C school. She didn't argue because she had seen the results and she had measured the results vis-a-vis the type of schools that the ward had chosen. So clearly, if we were to consider that, it will reduce the tendency of a lot of students choosing grade A and B schools when in fact, at the end of the day, their grades do not qualify them for places in such schools, and therefore they will have to go through the self-placement system. So I think a suggestion that is worth considering. If you want my response to what he said. Yes.
But what are your own thoughts about the process so far? I mean, the number of people who were not placed, you know, how the process is going so far. What was your own thoughts about the placement for this year, the reopening dates, the lack of time in between parents have complained about? What's your own thoughts about that?
Well, let me begin with the reopening. The BEC results were published when the placement was released vis-a-vis when they are supposed to go to school. It creates difficulties. From what we've been told by the Director General of the Ghana Education Service, they are supposed to report to the schools where they have gained admission on the 20th. And on the 27th, classes are expected, or academic work is expected to commence. Now, we have a situation where many are yet to be placed. We've been told that the system is moving along, but that even depends on who you speak to or what part of Ghana we are looking at. I have received complaints from other parents who are complaining that the system is too slow, they are getting frustrated, they are being tossed to and fro, and they are expressing disquiet. So yes, we know that it is not as smooth as we are made to believe. But I believe that at the end, but my issue still remains the issue of the timelines.
The timelines.
Because Ghana is a very vast country. I come from Dolinga. I mean, Upper East, Fumbisi is my constituency capital. And the likelihood that a student in Fumbisi may be placed in the school that is in the Ashanti region or the Greater Accra region is very high. I've seen it before, and I know it will happen again. Now, when you give such a very short window between when the placement was made public, which was towards the end of life, I think was it Thursday?
Wednesday, I think.
Wednesday or
the
Thursday?
The announcement was on Wednesday.
Yeah, the announcement was on Wednesday. And then it is after they check that they would know. When you then have to go to the service center to try and get your award placed through the self-placement system. All this is time. Now remember that every school, although we are speaking about free, we know that technically it is not every satisfied to the that is captured under the variables that government has identified as constituting free. So every school has a prospectus. So the students would have to get a prospectus, the parents will have to look at the prospectus, and they would then have to find the resources in this economy, very tight as it is, with all the challenges that to try and procure the items listed on the constituency and district capital to say Accra Academy. And you give the parents such a very narrow short window. Are you not putting both the student and the parent under a lot of pressure?
But the talk is that you know your child will go to school around this time. And generally, everything is free, generally.
Yes.
So the little things, maybe cutlass and things you have to buy, maybe bed sheet and a few things, you can buy them in anticipation that the child will go to school.
But every school has a different...
Yes, but every school has, as part of the prospectus, you bring in a bed sheet.
Well, yes.
You know,
so
maybe cutlass.
Some schools,
and those
they
general
say
things.
cutlass.
Yes, those general things.
Ask for a broom. So the point should be made that parents and students ought to be given ample time to prepare. So that has been our critique with regards to that. But look, the delay in the release of the BEC
the
results has had a cascading effect
yes.
in all of this.
You see, let's be honest and
but the
transparent.
BC results release is handled by a different body entirely.
Yes, but this is all part of the system. I mean, if they don't do what they are doing, placements cannot be made, and then students will not have a school to go to. The reason why facing challenges, WAEC has been challenged in terms. That is why it was delayed. In fact, many of the examiners were up in arms, and to make sure that they got their due, they were not willing to surrender the results of the scripts that they had marked. I have many text messages to that effect.
Wow.
The markers. So that is part of
so
the
the
reason
markers
why.
were holding on to the
Yeah,
scripts.
because they have not been paid. I mean, there is a protocol. Kofi knows this better than me about when they should be paid and how much they should be paid. And usually, I think they get the first tranche, and then when they are done, they get the rest. That didn't happen. Wow. So after they finished, many of them were very reluctant to let the data go. And I have some text messages to that effect. So what I'm saying is that what has happened is not deliberate. It is as a result of challenges that were. For the last few years. And I think that is what has really boxed us in terms of the insufficient timeline.
About the proximity of the announcement date to
the reopening date,
the reporting date.
Okay.
It's not just a matter of having just 2 working days to check the system, and if you are not auto-placed, do self-placement before Friday and then go to a school on Monday. It's also a matter of the cost of traveling.
That's right.
To where
the school is.
Even if you have been placed. And let me explain this. You have to go to the school and obtain a prospectus based on which you are going to buy the cutlass you spoke about.
Yes.
Now, on my SHS admission portal, which is supposed to be a portal to have all this information, the last time I checked, which was yesterday, have their prospectus listed there. If your school had their prospectus listed there, you wouldn't have to travel from Medina to, let's say, to Kumasi to go and get a prospectus
from the internet.
Exactly. So the cost of commuting, the parents and then the child, and for some of these parents, they are coming from communities that are remotely located. And so it's a whole day's journey to the school, location of the school, and another day journey back. So the cost of assessing the prospectus alone is something significant. And that is why it's important for GES and the Ministry of Education to ensure that on that my SHS admissions portal, every senior high school that is on the placement portal should have their prospectus uploaded there, so that parents don't have to go to a school just to obtain. Last year, there was a girl we were supporting. We had to go all the way to Peki to obtain prospectus, come back, buy the things, and then take her again. It's a waste of money. But today we know the cost of transport. Yes. No one needs election.
Let me take a short break. Let me take a short break. Okay. Let me take a short break. Come back and conclude on this point, and then we'll deal with the matters of protocol and what can be done. The private schools are also complaining. How do we resolve that moving forward? It wasn't so before. How do we resolve that? This is the big issue. We'll be right back.
As you know, Franco Trading Enterprise is still the leading mobile phone, accessories, and your electronic Nokia, Samsung, iPhone, Franco condition from 1.5 horsepower to 2.5 horsepower. Franco TV from 32 inches to 65 inches, and all other mobile phones from our shops nationwide at discounted prices on all digital platforms. Call us on 0246 422 338 or 0555 939311. You can download the Franco Trading Trading Enterprise, the home of quality mobile phones and accessories.
Back to the big issue, we are discussing the matter of the senior high school placement. The timing and everything, the fact that the results for the school placement release just 2-3 days, working days, then on Monday they have to report. But indeed, the ministry has said that on Monday they can pick out a prospectus. The school should work such that, between that 20th and then 27th, they can do the orientation and all of that between that period. So the academic work and helping me do the discussion are Dr. Clement Park, MP for Bosa South, Deputy Ranking Member of the Education Committee of Parliament, Kofi Asare, Executive Director, Africa Education World, Franklin Kujo, who is here to speak on the matter, President of Imani Africa. Honorable, you are about making a point.
Yes, the point I was making was that the issue of distance and the issue of transportation, as Kofi has raised, reinforces what I was alluding to. Yes. And I am surprised that we continue to tout our credentials about how digitized we are and how the digitized to get every single school to upload its prospectus on the portal. This is not rocket science. How difficult can this be?
Maybe the instructions.
These are things that we can even do using our smartphones.
It takes time to comply.
But somebody obviously is sleeping on the job.
It can't take years to do that. I mean,
this is somebody sleeping on the job. Because I know that if the directive were to be given and with the will to follow through, I mean, that is why we have chance. Let them tell their members that this is a requirement. Give them a timeline, and it will be done. So that at least we can reduce the
twice. But the first time is just to. But the first time when you go, you take the prospectus, you do the registration as well.
It's not necessary.
You do the registration, you get a code, they do all of that.
It can be done.
They key you into the main. Then you go home and come back properly as a student.
Those whose schools have placed their prospectus on the myshsadmission.com get the prospectus there, buy the stuff before they go to the school. So what you just said.
Okay, so when
you go, they'll key in you and then you're a student. Exactly.
I see.
All
right.
So that at least we can use technology
to,
because we don't have time. We have only 2 working days.
Yes.
And between the day that thing was announced, 2 working days.
Yes. But what is the point of technology?
Yes. So
I'm sure it is to improve our conditions.
Yes. I'm wondering why this has been difficult for the schools to comply with. But let's move it on. Last time we discussed the private schools and the public schools and the difficulty they appear to be having. It appeared unreal that private schools were now complaining that public schools were doing better than them and suspecting that it was as if there was a deliberate move to get them not to do well or to do worse than the public schools. But some explanation did come that there was some 30% quota given to public schools above the private schools. That was quite interesting. Kofi, if you could explain to us what the rationale behind that is and whether that is achieving its intended purpose.
Well, let me And I believe that quality public education and supervision and monitoring, and also a function of most of them would have been coming from deprived learning environments. Because they are coming from deprived learning environments, the full potentials they have, may not have been fully unearthed. And so to atone for that gap, you give that person an enhanced learning environment where there are more facilities and more qualified teachers and etc. to experience learning within that environment and realize the potential that they lost or they couldn't fully, manifest at the basic level. It makes sense as an affirmative action, something short term. But the reality is that that is not how you improve the quality of public education. The learning the students there realize their full academic potentials. What you have to do is that you ensure that every public school has a full component of trained teachers, properly supervised, well motivated, and that in the classrooms there are adequate furniture. There's adequate furniture. The learning environment is conducive for learning. You understand, and then parents and communities are playing the role they have to play in supporting what the school does. You ensure that capitation grants, teaching and learning resources required to facilitate teaching and learning is available. That is how you improve the quality of learning outcomes at the basic level, so that they can compete with private schools when they are entering category A schools at the senior school level. 30% protocol cannot replace the lack of desks in 40% of our public basic schools. It cannot replace the fact that capitation grant is in arrears for almost two academic years. It cannot replace the fact that over 5,000 of our public schools at the basic level take place under trees and sheds. And have access to desks. Okay, so the point I want to make is that, and it can in no way replace the fact that 4 years after rolling out a new curriculum, only textbooks are only available in between 3 to 4. Textbooks are only available in between 3 to 4 subjects. That the ratio is not 1:1, averagely 3:1. So when such deficits are existing at the basic level, you can't bring in an automatic affirmative action to quickly resolve that gap. It is not sustainable. Now, apart from that, it is also in a way to solve a problem of inequality. Okay, we are further creating more inequalities, and this is where the private school matter comes in. You are trying to bridge a gap between the performance of public schools and private schools by giving preferential access to public school candidates who want to go to category A schools. By in doing so, we are not mindful of the fact that about 70% of private schools are low cost. Low cost private schools, according to the IMF, 70% are low cost. This low cost means that the fees they charge is not necessarily for profit, but they find themselves in some communities where to provide public basic schools there for citizens to enroll. So these schools spring up in these areas because education is underserved in these communities. And I use OEB as an example. The whole of OEB, there's only one public basic school which is called OEB Presby. And it is so congested that it runs a double shift, morning and afternoon. So the private schools in OEB, if you find people attending that school, and as I said, my security man's child attends one of those schools, It's not because they have the luxury of taking their children to those low-cost private schools. It is because the state has failed for decades to provide access to public education consistent with 38(2) of our constitution. And for that matter, as citizens, they must survive. And that the right of their children to education shouldn't be truncated because the state has failed to provide them. How do you punish such a citizen by telling them that I am giving 30% preferential access to category A schools?
Yes.
Their teachers are. The last time I did the research for VSO into the operations of low-cost private schools in Abobolosi, for instance, there's a school called ECG. The school takes place in a church from class 1 to whatever it is. In a church, they pay 2 cedis a day as school fees. In some of there are 10 of them in Abobolosi area. Some of them bring chairs to school. The point I want to make is that there's a school nearby, Richard Akwe, just in Abobolosi there. But that school is full. They can't get admission. So they have to make do with this makeshift school. That's about 20% of what public school teachers are paid, and teachers were not trained. So these are a semblance of schools. They are not schools. These are what you call low-cost private schools. And you are telling the students who learn in this environment, the parents who enroll their children in this environment because there are no public schools available, that their punishment is that they've taken their children to low-cost private schools, and so they have to. You are running a 100-meter race, and that whilst they are starting at meter 0, their colleagues in public schools start at meter 30 because they are 30% protocol, and then they are all running 100-meter race. Are you being fair? And in conclusion, let's not lose sight of the fact that for free compulsory universal basic education also provides under 22 equal access to education. And also, that same constitution allows for private sector participation in education provision. Now, the right to education is one that is defined with respect to the child. It is by virtue of the child being a Ghanaian that they are eligible to enjoy F3 under 38(2) of the constitution. It is by virtue of the person being a Ghanaian, the child. So why do you discriminate against a Ghanaian who attends a low-cost private school? What have they done? You understand? It is discriminatory. And that is why I think that in as much as it serves a purpose of bridging an equity gap, its application has been straitjackets. And it has assumed that every private school is Association International or Rich Church. And so be it, which is not the case. And that the failure to distinguish between low-cost private schools, a junior high school located in Manson Kwanta in the Wasam somewhere, where government has failed to build a junior high school. You can't treat that private junior high school as your private school that you are going to restrict access to a category A school because you feel they are privileged. And so we need to look at the public school students again because it discriminates against private schools by 30%. Yes. But beyond that, because they are the ones in these private schools, not the owners. Discriminate against Ghanaian children.
But in terms of that discrimination, affirmative action is a form of discrimination. So to broaden it, it is to serve a certain purpose, to bridge the equity gap.
Yeah, but you don't.
So that could be positive.
Positive discrimination is when you are discriminating to enhance access to the other party, the vulnerable group. Is that not the case?
Okay, so in this case, the point is that these low-cost guys
they are vulnerable. They are even more vulnerable than the public school students. So this is not.
Let me speak to you, Franklin. Franklin, this is education, but you know, an issue of equity. It appears that the intention of the policymakers may be to bridge an equity gap, but it is creating another problem. How do we resolve this? Do we categorize the private schools into maybe category A, like we've done for the SS or senior high schools, category B, category C, and say that, okay, from category C, we will treat you same as we will treat the public schools. How should it be? Because it's a problem and the private schools are complaining. And if our parents have now started making their children go to write exams in public schools so they can have access to the so-called category A schools.
Well, I mean, Kofi Asari has been quite phenomenal in doing this work for and his group. Look, if you want to make sure, if you want to equalize access and equity and all of the fairness that we talk about, I think it's in making sure that there's relative improvement, investment, predictable and, if you like, categorical investment in the outcomes that we all desire. Because trust me, look, if we did this 30%, if you like, allocation based on protocol and all the reasons that have been given, once the numbers pick up again, we probably might end up saying 50% or probably increase it to 50%. That we've been seeing. I submit that the moment we create this opportunity for our own lack of investment and proper outcomes, then we are on the high road to what I call Armageddon. Because, as I said, what happens if the failure rate or the outcomes that we desire in education are not commensurate with the investment that we are making? Are we going to vary the percentage allocations, the protocol allocations? I don't know. I mean, I think it's best to, as it were, if government has decided to embark on this free SHS thing, which obviously has come to stay, to solve this matter than to make sure that the equity that we want is actually done on paper. I mean, equality and equity and all the isms that comes with fairness in society must be categorically have this type of outcome. And even in the likely event that we have people who would definitely not do well, 30% is actually on the very high side, really. I mean, I would have thought that a percentage of up to about 5% would do. But the moment we peg it at that high percentage without commensurate investments in the outcomes we all desire, trust me, this figure could likely go up the next couple of years.
All right, let me come to Honorable. Honorable, so what was the way forward? How do we that there's some semblance of equity and fairness across the board?
Well, Salom, I wish I was the government spokesperson, but nonetheless, I think that somebody who is an educationist, and I truly believe that education is a right, regardless of whether it is public or private. It is Ghanaians and our wards who stand to benefit. So within that context, at least, I would also, take a bite at the cherry. I truly believe that it is not fair, as rightly and eloquently explained by Kofi Asari. I mean, when we hear private schools, the initial thought is that these are wealthy, affluent schools. But I know. I mean, based on my background, where I come from, and the work that I've been doing, and some of the work that Africa Education Watch has been doing, if not for the private school system, if not for the existence of private schools, the number of Ghanaian children who would not have the opportunity to access an education would have been staggering, even with the public basic private schools in place. As Kofi and his group have done the work, they indicate that over 1 million Ghanaian children between ages 4 and 8 attended school at all.
1 million.
Over 1 million have not attended school at all.
According to the government statistical service.
Yes.
Wow.
At all. Now imagine that we didn't have the magnitude of the challenge that we have. So when the state fails or is unable to meet its obligation to the citizens in terms of providing the fiscal structures, in terms of providing the needed expertise, in terms of teachers, in terms of providing adequate funding in the form of capitation grants and even administrative grants. And parents don't have spaces even in the public school system. And in some communities, they don't exist at all. We have so many schools, basic public schools, that have only primary 1 to primary 6. They don't have the transition, the transitional stage of a junior high school. And there are many that have primary 1 to primary 6. Age to just sit by, or any community to sit by without making an effort to try and get avenues for their wards to obtain an education. So how then do we punish, individual private entities for trying to complement what the state has failed to do? So within that context, I also believe that this 30% quota in favor of our wards who go through the public basic school system was up and doing. We had enough schools across the length and breadth of the country. They were all properly resourced with the teachers, with the laboratories, with the libraries. I don't think that we would have cause to complain. But when you don't, and somebody's trying to assist you, at least the best you can do is to assist the person who is trying to assist you. But it looks like the state and the current policy arrangement is seeking to punish
the children.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But when I say yes, the children, who are our children as well. Yeah. So I agree. Now we need to take another look at this 30%. And I think that the complaint by the private schools is justified.
Right. So in concluding, has this matter come up in policy spaces? Because you engage with the, has it come up in policy spaces, and what has been the response? Will it not be better to apply, for example, the cutoff point criteria, so that let's say if you are coming from a public school or a low-cost private school, if the cutoff point, let's say, is aggregate 7, maybe your cutoff point could be aggregate 9, to bring about that equity, like we saw Professor Andam of blessed memory do in tech those early times. What
There was a meeting with between the private school leaders and the minister. They raised it again. I know they are not too happy. They are planning a series of protests. Maybe they will announce it themselves. I don't want to be their spokesperson. But it has reached that level long ago. And that the only remaining thing is for action to be taken. It is not an issue so far as it's not news. So far as I'm concerned, everybody's aware. I think what we need to do is that the National School Inspectorate Authority has data on all private schools in Ghana, because they are the regulator of private schools. They have the categorizations. They know that 63% of all the schools, private schools in the northern regions are low cost. They know, we have the data. So I think that if government wants to do it, the regulator can categorize the private schools and then have a way of doing it. Not who are, whose children attend low-cost private schools. But let me conclude by saying that this whole idea of the computer is a good, it's a good thing. I want to salute the. I want to propose two things. The first is that the regional resolution centers is an issue. It's an improvement from the National Resolution Center, but now it is becoming another issue because people have to travel from districts and communities all the way to the regional capitals just to resolve an issue that could have been resolved at the district level. So let's see how we can decentralize it to the district as we progress, so that it will be easier to assess support. Finally,
a quick one. Yes, we're just running out of time.
I want to recommend to the leadership of the private schools to write to the parliamentary subcommittee on education.
Very well.
They should come and present their issues. We also have a role to play in this.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. So thanks so much, guys. This is how we conclude today's edition of the program. My guest on this segment, Dr. Clementa Park, MD for Bosa, Bosa South, Deputy Ranking Member on Education Committee, Kofi Asara, Executive Director, Africa Education Watch, and Franklin Kujo, President of Imani Africa. My name is
Valentine, Osasa. It's over, I know. But you see, chop money is not Valentine's money. It's not enough to give chop money. So if you slack this Valentine, my friend, come on, go back and go and do the needful. Go and do the necessary thing. And now the women who were giving their men supporter and singlet this year, government has passed a legislative instrument, LISS, banning all women from giving their men supporter and singlet, LISS. And the Greater Accra Regional Minister, Henry Korte, Honorable, he is responsible for the enforcement of that law, Operation No Supporter or Singlet. Any woman who gave her man supporter and singlet for Valentine has broken the law. And no, it's not too late. So the men, who, you have to do something. Now, speaking of which, I saw a video online of a woman who bought the latest version of a MacBook for her husband. And guess what? She didn't die. I promise, she is still alive. Yes, she didn't die. No, this Valentine, I saw something, I observed something, right? Many of the women who are like already married or committed or something, they got like very little or no surprises as a gift. Cash until